Hello? Hello?
Podcast Network Asia.
Welcome to She Talks Peace, a podcast that highlights the role of women peacebuilders around the world in bringing lasting peace and security to communities. Eavesdrop on their communities and get to know their stories. From the Philippines to Malaysia, from Indonesia to Palestine, from Myanmar to the United States. Their dreams and hopes for a world without violence and a world where every woman and girl can be whoever she wants to be. Hosted by Amina Rasul Bernardo, President of the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. This is She Talks Peace.
I know a lot of people were angry with me for publishing that, but I said you have to look at this demographic, right? From this angle, who are they? Do not look at them as from the political lens. Why do they eat what they eat? Why do they practice what they practice? Why do they do what they do? This is the only way you can actually understand who these people are.
Salam, dear listeners. This is Amina Rasul welcoming you back to another exciting episode of She Talks Peace. I'm here in Manila, working with the Philippine Center for Islam and Democracy. And as part of my work, I, of course, scour the news, what's happening all over the world. And if, like me, you are worried about the rise of extremism in the world, you will be discouraged by the situation in the United States and the West. As you know, Mr. Trump, the former president of the United States, who has been identified by many analysts as a major source of disinformation and support for right-wing extremist groups, has been brought back to Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I recently read an article on the BBC News about how Telegram has been used as a hub for disinformation, for conspiracy theories, terrorist activities even, and calls for violence during the pandemic. And it seems to be going on till today. Let me just share some of the news with you. It was written by Richard Morris, a political reporter for BBC News. He wrote that the United Nations, in a study that they did last year, painted a sobering picture of how the pandemic has fueled terrorism and violent extremism. Morris writes that the heavy-handed enforcement of COVID restrictions, growing economic inequalities, and an erosion of trust in government, coupled with a diversion of resources away from fighting terrorism, were among the factors driving the change. And these are all conclusions of the United Nations. And he quotes a researcher at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, a gentleman named Jacob Davey, who is a UK counter-extremist think tank writer. Davey also identified quite significant spikes in extremist activity and also conspiracy theories during the pandemic. Now, when you talk about extremism and terrorism and conspiracy theories, we're not talking here about what's happening in Afghanistan and in the Islamic world. We're also talking about what's happening in democratic and capitalistic nations like the United States. And I keep wondering, what is the impact of this trend here in Southeast Asia? Because in spite of all of the problems that we have armed conflict, we have inequity in some countries, still Southeast Asia has managed to be relatively stable and moderate. But thinking about what happened in Malaysia during their general elections in November of 2022, I could see what was also going on in the United States, as described by Richard Morris. In Malaysia, social media and WhatsApp blew up with hateful videos that promoted extremist ideas. So I thought perhaps we should invite our my co-host, a familiar voice and face on She Talks Peace, to tell us and give us her take on what's going on in Malaysia. Why did extremist videos populate the social media networks? So our guest for today is my dear friend Dina Zaman, the co-founder of Iman Research. Now, Dina is a writer based in Kuala Lumpur. She's written, to my mind, she's already published 3 books. She has appeared on international media and literacy festivals organized by Al Jazeera, BBC, the Ubud Writers Festival in Indonesia, and the Georgetown Literary Festival. Today, let's talk to Dina about a piece that she wrote in for the Malay Mail, and it's really interesting. She said she wrote about understanding Malayness post GE 15. So welcome to She Talks Peace, Dina.
One, thank you for inviting me. It's been a while since I've been on She Talks Peace. Over a year, maybe 2 years.
Well, not
Yes.
it only seems that long, Dina.
Yeah.
Only
Okay.
seems that long. I guess you must be so overwhelmed with a lot of activities in Malaysia, especially with the new administration.
Since the last time we spoke, I remember telling you that the rise of ethno nationalism in Malaysia is increasing. So, but is this something to be feared? So let's put it this way. I always look at everything through not from the political lens, but more from the ethnographic lens, anthropological lens to figure out, gee, what do you do the things that you do? And that was how I did all my work when I used to work in the media. I just wanted to know why. And oddly enough, I actually befriended my interviewees. We are still me. I have friends who wonder, why are you friends with these people? But I'd like to think this. I mean, we may not agree with their ideology nor their politics, but at the end of the day, we are all human, right? We all want similar things.
Dina, you're
Uh,
talking about the Islamic Party, PAS?
no, not Islamic Party, not necessarily. I'm talking about the Malays, whom everyone, including a lot of people in Malaysia, who are like, oh my God, they're voting past, they're voting this.
Hmm.
Actually, I mean, it's not as clear cut as that. So a few days ago, we had a meeting, and Altaf and I went off to KLCC, beautiful area and all. And we walked smack
Very,
into
very pricey shopping center.
very. But anyway, after we had our, I don't know, overpriced Starbucks hot chocolate and all, we walked straight into a demonstration by Hizbut
Uh-huh.
Tahrir Malaysia. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
In Malaysia, Hizbut Tahrir, right, despite its links, in Malaysia is very grassroots. It's more humanitarian, okay? Of course, the name HT itself is freaking everyone out. Oh my God, we've got terrorists here and all that.
That's right. I
Uh,
mean, weren't they sort of linked to extremist
yeah.
I don't know,
But in
activity?
Malaysia, it's basically about Malay rights, Muslim rights. Yeah. Now, I'm not being an apologist for this. I'm just giving you the background to it. The
Okay, go.
men who were protesting, right? This Hizbut Tahrir men. When I looked up to them, went up to the crowd, they were basically, working class men. The men that you probably see at a little, not a restaurant, but what we call warung, street hawkers, stalls and all, right?
Where they
Uh,
serve the best food, actually.
Yes. And who were very concerned about how is it that in Sweden you can actually burn the Quran. This is not the way. You want to talk about democracy, free speech, you don't burn holy books. And of course, in their, in their discourse for them, it's you shouldn't be burning the Quran. But in a larger picture, right, I can understand that all holy books, holy texts should not be treated this way, all in a
Right.
religion. Yeah. So let me backtrack a bit. So when I put this out on my Instagram, and you have to follow my Instagram, uh,
I will. I will.
yeah, everyone panicked. Oh my God, did the Taliban's have arrived? And I went, no, the Taliban's have not arrived. They've always been here. Now back to my article. Now, I think, you know the politics of Malaysia, right? Now, why did people do this? Why did they all vote for Perikatan Nasional or PAS? Why not Pakatan Harapan? This is not about, PAS versus Pakatan Harapan. You are talking about an evolution of a Malay demographic, which is not urban centric, but in other states. When I say that, they're not all, well, not all of them are penniless. Some of them are teachers, some of them are engineers who prefer a life out of the, out of the city. And I'm sure that happens in the Philippines, where they said, you agree, don't agree with this. Okay, one, we're Muslim, so you have to support an Islamic party. Two, in KL, you guys have really crazy politics. It's really, really toxic. So here we have everything that we need. We don't have to worry about food security. Three, what you see is this, that the Malays themselves, and a lot of them have been educated abroad, but chose to stay in their states instead of staying in, Kuala Lumpur or Penang or Johor, yeah? Who were educated abroad and said, okay, we were exposed to the Islamist thought when we were studying abroad. And now, of course, in the last recent 10, 20 years, they were exposed to Islamist thought in local universities.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and now they're thinking, okay, as we evolve, this is what we are. We are not the Malays that were the creations of Dr. Mahathir's time, or even the
Mhm.
prior to Dr. Mahathir,
So
where,
we're aiming for a better life
yeah,
economically.
yes. So this whole thing, when I looked at it, and I know a lot of people were angry with me for publishing that, but I said, you have to look at this demographic, right? From this angle, who are they? Do not look at them as from the political lens. Why do they eat what they eat? Why do they practice what they practice? Why do they do what they do? This is the only way you can actually understand who these people are. Yeah?
Yep.
That article really, really sparked a lot of, wow, I had such a headache. It's really interesting because the ones who really got riled up were
Mm.
not my non-Malay friends. My non-Malay friends probably thought, okay, this is their war. I don't want to get involved in it. I think I'm just assuming, okay? But my urban friends, middle class, upper middle class,
Mhm.
English speaking, English educated Malay
Mhm.
friends. Oh, they really flipped. They actually belittled them. I said they are uneducated. I said they're not uneducated. Look at where they come from. Maybe they speak a bit more Malay than everyone else, but then they are out of the city.
Mhm.
But they have the internet. They are well read. And I said that I am not defending them, but you need to go to the states to see to the rural areas to see how things have changed. you know. And I can tell you this, a lot of my city friends, right, Malay, Chinese, or Indian, right, they're all leaving the KL by the droves because they said it's
And
a
going out.
simpler, better
Yeah.
life.
Mhm.
So where did this come from? You're looking at an evolution of the Malay demographic, as I said earlier, okay? So maybe the 60s, 70s, right? There was a huge group of people who went to United States, Europe, and they
Yeah.
were very secular. Came back, yay, we're going to go to nightclubs. There were
Mhm.
also those who were exposed to Muslim Brotherhood,
Uh-huh.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
people like people who created forces, etc., and
Right.
forces and all that. And they came back and they said, "Oh, we don't have that in Malaysia. We don't have this
Mhm.
kind of proper Islamic education then." Okay,
Yeah.
what they had is probably what you call pondok-pondok, sekolah pondok ugama, very
Mm-hmm.
little, tiny ni. But when they went overseas, they realized, oh, you can formalize this and
Yes.
bring this back to Malaysia. So when they came back, yes, they were all beneficiaries of the government scholarship. I met many of them. They went to Oxford, they went to Nottingham, they went here, they went there. They all speak British English. Okay. Some, okay, or many of them are in Kuala Lumpur and they lead very good lives. Some decided, okay, I'm going back home, right? So these people, seeing this, they said, okay, we're going to bring this thought. Okay, we're grateful to the government. There's some of us who like the nightclubs and the nightlife a bit too much, but the rest of us, we are holding on to our Islamic roots.
Right.
And they brought this back, right?
Yeah.
And it started. So what they do is, basically it's like, maybe it's like chicken pox. They start growing here, there,
Mm-hmm.
everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
little cells, okay? So they said, and they started, okay, this is how it is. Over the years, when you had UMNO, right? When UMNO said, yes, we're fighting for Malay rights, this right, that right, and all that, okay. Well, they became richer and richer and richer. But they neglected one thing, the heartland. They will go and
That's right.
talk, we'll give you a little bit here, a little bit there. Now, this is where PAS came in, or any other small groups.
They knew the
PAS,
Malay heart.
yes, and also one thing about PAS, yeah? One thing which I noted, and not just PAS, but any Islamist organization. There's a
Mm-hmm.
big difference between Islamist and Islamic, yeah? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
learning this now, is that one of the things is that to become a Muslim, you've got to be a good humanitarian. Right. So most Muslims that I know who are involved with, organizations like Ikram, Abim, and so forth, they
Those are
do
the
a lot of,
humanitarian groups and
yeah,
professional groups.
yes. And these, because of their thinking, they're like, we are communal, we have to help people. That is how Islamist parties, organizations have won the hearts of a lot of
Yeah.
people.
I was also thinking the educated
Yeah,
Muslims who came back and brought in
yeah,
um, Islamist
yeah,
education.
right.
Is it also possible that they were reacting against what they saw to be um, uh, Western society that was
Yes,
going to lead them to perdition and
yeah,
lead our communities to perdition? And perhaps they saw the same thing happening in Kuala
yeah,
Lumpur,
it's true.
especially with all of these scandals affecting your political leadership,
Yes, yes. This is interesting. Among my friends who are Islamists, right? Okay, who are part of Amanah, a political party, right? They don't see a problem with having a Chinese leader, a non-Muslim leader, because they say we want things to work out. Yeah. Um, and there are some who says no, we cannot have non-Muslim leaders. But all this is a reaction to what you see. I mean, you talk about Malay rights, you talk about Muslim rights, but you're also very corrupt. So this is
right?
also a reaction. Okay, in
Mm-hmm.
some ways, it's an evolution. So it's parallel. Like okay, doesn't matter. We're Muslims. We'll go ahead. All this. This is the Muslim country. At the same time, people are saying those who are very political who are saying we're not going to put up with this anymore. If it's anything, yeah, that they have done because they understand young people well, maybe not well, they may not be popular, but they understand. That is how they got onto TikTok. I tell you this, I mean, this TikTok thing was like boom, and you're like, whoo, they're on TikTok. Everyone was lagging behind trying to get onto TikTok and figuring out how to do this. The messaging was frightening. And I looked and I went, oh dear, this is so not good. But, and you know how young people are now that, okay, I shouldn't be patronizing because I'm older, but it's a different world now. Your attention span is based on 1 2 second, ping, ping,
Oh
ping,
yeah,
dance, dance, dance.
and netizens generally are young. They're the ones
Yeah,
who really devour content on TikTok and
right.
Instagram, not
Yeah,
Twitter,
yeah,
evidently.
yeah. So then, what happened is that the Islamists got on this. I think they hired, or maybe it's your own people who are saying you have to believe in this. If not, habis go. That actually frightened a lot of young people I know. Many of the young people I know don't necessarily come from middle class backgrounds. They're good people, they're working as civil servants, they come from, you know, humble upbringing, but determined to make a better life. And then going, oh, this is scary even for us as Muslims. What do we do to stem this? How do we counter these narratives? But what we saw was enough to frighten the whole of Malaysia. You know. On that note, I met some people the last few days, and one is Islamist, the other one's secular. But we talked. And he told me one of the things that may help Malaysia is this. So it's not going to be easy, Amina. You know, in Malaysia, right? Now, unlike Thailand, unlike the Philippines, unlike Indonesia, where you have a single stream school and then you have private schools. In Malaysia, you have government schools, which
Mhm.
are predominantly in Bahasa Malaysia, and you have vernacular schools. So when you have all this language chauvinism, it actually, what do you call that? Creates that, that gap. I speak Chinese. I'm not able to speak Bahasa Malaysia. Oh, I can. It's pidgin. I speak Malay, but I can't exactly speak English. And in Malaysia, what happens is this: in schools, right? You are zoned out. Okay, so that means if you live in this area, you go to that school. And there have been many cases where, let's just say, okay, for instance, you go to this school, okay, Amina, and even though you scored straight A's, your grasp of English is not good. Okay, despite your
Mhm.
straight A's, how are you going to enter the workforce?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And a lot of our neighborhoods in Kuala Lumpur and the rest of Malaysia, if you look at the makeup, the demo, the racial makeup of these areas in Malaysia, they tend to be predominantly this race, that race. So
Mhm.
how to talk about integration? You know, language chauvinism is another one. Now, how do we unite? If let's just say Anwar or whoever decides, all right, everyone's going to speak in English, right? Bahasa Malaysia is your national language, but the language of business will be English.
English.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like how we did many years ago, like my time.
Mhm.
Can we revert to that?
Let's talk about that a little more. You
Yeah.
have got Datuk Seri Anwar as
Yeah.
Prime Minister, and in his previous elections, he was supported by different
Yeah.
ethnic groups, political parties with different ethnic groups. So he has access to
Yeah.
these different politically influential
Right.
groups. Your government is still a rich government and therefore able to implement programs. Should the government come up with a cohesive program for integration and do it well? I mean, you have a good civil service. And what I'm thinking, Dina, in the
Yeah.
Philippines, we have got hundreds of
Okay.
vernaculars,
All right.
and in our public school system, when you're just starting out in public school, a
Yeah.
teacher can teach you in the vernacular so that reading and writing becomes easier. As
Yeah.
you progress, then they bring in the national language, they bring in English.
Yeah.
We are a poor country compared to Malaysia,
Mhm.
but the Department of Education, the Ministry of Education, has put it as a mandate of the department that peace education should be incorporated
Right.
into the teaching. So teachers have to be aware. And I'm just wondering whether Dato Seri Anwar, because at one time when he was Deputy Prime Minister, he was also Minister of Education, right? Would he Dina, be able to have some reforms in your educational system that would allow more of this coming together, this reunification of the different peoples that are in Malaysia? Is he going to do that?
Amina, we're already having problems. Yeah. A few days ago, right? There was a school in Johor, multiracial
Mm-hmm.
school, and there was an utter
Uh-huh.
uproar. And I couldn't even make sense of my WhatsApp because I mean, what on earth is happening? Okay. That's one, yeah. Why? because the school decided for the Malay Muslim students to have extra workshops. Now, initially, the school thought, okay, maybe it's extra workshops about religion, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But no, it was actually to boost up their studies in other classes. So the
Uh-huh.
non-Muslim parents were saying, what makes them so special? My kids also need boosting up in their grades.
That's right.
Why must it only
Fair.
be? And the Ministry of Education hasn't been able to settle that in the best possible way. Two, look, I know the Minister of Education. I know her. I respect her work, okay, as an activist.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she's in way over her head, becoming the Minister of Education. She will have to work very closely with the civil servants on this.
That's
She
right.
comes
Yeah.
from a different background, totally different background. Now, how are you going to apply that to government schools in Malaysia, which are multicultural, which have different needs, different demands? I can tell you, I think Anwar, right? So this is what we all tell each other, our friends. Okay lah, he's already got what he wanted. He's a prime minister. I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. He's got a lot of problems. The racial division, not just among the students, Amina, among the teachers. We get reports, we get calls. So I'm going, wow, it's like a Pandora's box. Okay, he said he's paying off. He's asking Goldman Sachs, you pay back. We got the payback all out there. Okay, that's great. And then he's made this little boohoo with, the daughter. All right. But I think, it doesn't look very healthy, But okay, it's been 2-3 months. He became minister in November, December, January. It's been 2 months. We've got February, right?
What are
I
his
think
approval ratings? Is he doing well in the eyes of
I
the
think
electorate?
his PR is pretty good. He's doing the right
Mm.
thing. But we're
Mm-hmm.
all also like waiting to see, like, okay, is he all right? I mean, he seemed to have impressed a lot of people when he came, like when he said, okay, we're not going to renovate PMO, which is great. I'm going to be just wearing this. We're not going to be wearing expensive shoes. He's wearing this chapal, this shoes,
Mm.
And I just thought, you're making the right moves.
Is he on TikTok? Does he have an
Uh,
Instagram
no,
account?
he has an Instagram. So that day he was doing CrossFit. So we're like, oh, okay. But I think he's got a lot of work. His cabinet has got a lot of work in front of them.
Yeah. Tying up your the study you've done on
Yeah.
being Malay and
Yeah.
how this is now influencing real politics
Yeah.
and something that the political leaders in Malaysia have to really be wary about.
Yeah.
You may the studies that have been done by the UN and by all of these other Western analysts, and you also looking at how fundamentalist extremist groups have been so good at using social media. So my
Yeah.
question to you is, how come governments with all their resources are not as good in accessing using social media and putting out content that can at least provide a counter narrative?
I think, Amina, to be fair, right? I think the civil servants in the Malaysian government have a lot on their plates. We recently met a ministry, and they have so much while they express their problems. And yes, they also want to counter these hateful narratives. They also said, look, we're limited. We have to do modules. We've got to train teachers. We've got to do all this. Things like this need to be outsourced. Sorry. I mean, there's so much one
Yeah.
can do to outsource to a social media company,
Mhm.
right? But I don't know. I mean, I guess people are not putting the money into where it is.
They should get Gen Z to populate public
Yeah.
information outfits in each ministry and let
Well, you
these
know what?
young people handle the messaging, because I think your government, like my government, when they put out information about what government's doing or the position it's taking on an issue, they create a statement and they
Right.
send it out the traditional way. Email the statement, put
Right.
it on Facebook, and hope that it gets to disseminate itself. But
Maybe.
Dina, you
Yeah.
and I were in civil society, we're in the private sector, non-government, and what you're painting in Malaysia is something that worries us as well here in the
Yeah.
Philippines, and I think in all of ASEAN, you would see that tendency towards the extreme right
Yeah.
creeping in. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if those of us who are in civil society who have more flexibility in action, what is it that we can do to provide a counter narrative? Is Malaysian civil society doing that?
One, to do that, we need money, 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 money. That's one. Yeah.
Money makes the world go
Go
around.
around.
Yep.
Two, I think, Amina, to do this, right, we have to take a whole of society approach, I think I've told you with the shrinking space of CSOs in Malaysia, right? Um, I mean, a lot of us are burnt out. I am. We can only do so much. So we've got to figure out a way where we can use a whole of society approach to countering narratives. The thing with Malaysia is there are just so many silos and gatekeepers and God knows what. Oh, you can't do this because I represent this. I can't do that. Da da da. No, you can't enter my territory. I mean, how on earth are you going to get things done? You know. So to me, okay, I'm just very jaded here. Iman's been around for 8 years, right? And you think, sheesh, you guys are still arguing over your turfs when we have problems, right? Um, it's going to take, it's not just about money. Okay, let's just say we get 1 million USD. It's still not easy to get the resources. Look at this. I mean, this WPS, World Peace, Women Peace and Security Agenda. We've been
Right.
talking about it for the last 2 years. I can see
Right.
right now that it hasn't gained any traction here. Maybe a bit here,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a bit there. You know, I
Mm-hmm.
have tried talking to civil society and it's just flown over their heads. And you're like, you need to have women, youth, everyone involved in this.
Mm-hmm.
So I think with CSOs in Malaysia, we really need to reflect back and see what is it that we can do on this limited shoestring budget that we have. Two, how are we going to get this message across? We work too much in silos, too much in silos. I have actually said, and through my own volition, I mean, I'm not saying it's a perfect thing. There are, like you, I'm in a few WhatsApp groups. And I said, okay, you guys have been like whacking this particular group. Okay, they can be extreme. Is there any way that you can meet halfway? Oh, no, you're going to whack, 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 whack. Yes, we know that. But I mean, this new book I'm writing about, right? If I'm able to actually have a conversation, and you think of this strange girl, but I'm actually able to have a conversation and say, look, we don't have to agree with each other's politics, but I want to write about what you feel and believe. If I can do that, why can't you? But there's also that fear, that anger. And that's what I keep telling. And I think everyone thinks I'm cuckoo, but the thing is this, you have to approach this from a different lens. When you talk about far right populist people, of course they're frightening. Even I'm so scared of them. But I want to approach them like human beings. We don't have to like each other, but I want to know what drives you here. When
You
you
have to
put,
understand them, and you have
yeah,
to give them space to speak their truth.
and when you put this political lens on them, it makes everyone defensive.
Yeah.
Look, the far right has taken pot shots at me before. I'm like, panic, 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 but man, what the hell do I do now? But later on, after I calm down, you start thinking, hey, why are you so angry? This is a small thing. And you start thinking, why? Why? Is it malice? Why are you so malicious? I mean, these are questions I ask. Why are you
Right.
so hateful?
Right.
Or I started reading this because I told you I'm writing this book, right? So I'm a slow, I'm a late bloomer. But I came up with this: the politics of resentment, the politics of assimilation and acknowledgement. We all want to be acknowledged. Yeah.
Maybe that should be the title of your, is it fourth book already? The
Oh,
title could be The Art of Listening.
no, it's going to be called Malayland. I'll probably move to the Philippines. Witness protection program.
Witness Protection Program. Yes, because I was really thinking when you were describing your attempts to reach out to the other side and how important the art of listening really is, and how those of us who were educated in the West uh, aren't really um, supported to in our listening skills. In fact, if you have a Western education, it's more the high flyer coming out with arguments to
Yeah,
demolish the other side.
yeah,
And when I look at Eastern education, it is more consensus, which means you narrow the extreme left and the extreme right until you
yeah,
have common ground. I mean, both sides have their pros and cons, but
yeah,
I really think that for those of us who are looking at unification of
yeah.
our peoples, establishing uh, peaceful foundations, we have to bolster our listening skills. Me,
Oh,
I have less of a problem. I mean, look at my ears. I can hear. Before we go, Dina,
yes.
just so that we end on an upbeat note, given that you have a new prime minister, what's your prospect? What do you think is the prospect for your government, and what is your message to your fellow Malaysians to ensure that Malaysia does live up to its image in Southeast Asia as a
Wow.
bulwark of stability, progress, and still moderation?
Uh, as a Malaysian, I'm just going to take it day by day, right? We have
Mm-hmm.
had three, four different prime ministers, governments the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how Anwar and cabinet will fare, but as a Malaysian, I hope they stay around for the next 3, 4 years because I don't think I can deal with another elections or another government, another prime minister. I hope they listen to people on the ground and not the
Mm-hmm.
people who seem to be power brokers, the ones who say, okay, I can do this, I can do that. I
Right.
think we need to really talk to civil society and people who have this lived experiences to say, look, PM, this is what's happening here. You know, for example, public transport. I mean, it's great that our transport minister is going up and down, all these trains and all, but I think we need to do something a bit more than that. So
Mm-hmm.
I wish them all the best. I don't want to be in their shoes. I want to finish my book. I told myself this. Once I finish this book, I'm not going to write about identity anymore. I'm not going to write about what it means to be Malay Muslim anymore.
You're
Right.
right about romance, Dina.
Romance, right?
Romance
Blockbusters.
in Malaysia.
Yeah. Yes. I will
That
do
will be
that.
a bestseller.
Yes, I will do that.
Thanks
Yeah.
so much,
All
Dina,
right.
for
Okay.
joining us
Yeah.
on this episode, talking about understanding Malayness. And
Yes.
the thing is, what you are describing describes not just our friends in Malaysia, but I think it can apply to any country in the world, whether they have minority groups or not. Because, like it or not, as the UN has said, extremism, divisions
Yeah.
in society is evident everywhere. And
Okay.
we need people like you who try to let us see the other side, get a
Mm-hmm.
better understanding of the situation. And like you said, see them as human. They have a point of view. You may not agree with him, but at least listen and
Yes.
acknowledge.
Yeah.
So thanks so
Well,
much, Dina.
no, thank you. I mean, I
Until
hope. No,
we see each other
yes. Hopefully in Bali.
physically in KL or hopefully Bali.
Yes.
This is Amina Rasul. Dear listeners, thank you so much for joining Dina and me. And
Yes.
we hope to see you again next week for another exciting episode on She Talks Peace. So
Okay.
bye.
Bye. Bye. She Talks Peace is brought to you in partnership with Podcast Network Asia and Podmetrics, the easiest way to monetize your podcast. For more information, check out their website at podcastnetwork.asia and podmetrics.co.
The views and opinions expressed by the podcast creators, hosts, and guests do not necessarily reflect the official policy and position of Podcast Network Asia, the hosts of the program, or other programs of the network. Any content provided by the people on the podcast are of their own opinion and are not intended to malign any religion, ethnic group, club, organization, company, individual, or anyone or anything.